Justin Henderson, you guys. Dr. Justin Henderson, it's good to have you with us.
It's good to be here.
For those who don't know Dr. Justin, hey, I know we're going to have a lot of Antioch family, a lot of Beaumont family that'll be on. So you guys will be familiar somewhat with Dr. Justin Henderson. For those of you who are not familiar with him, let me give you a little background on him. So Dr. Justin Henderson, you guys, is a psychotherapist. He is a licensed professional counselor and EAP specialist at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. He is the owner and CEO of Mentality 2.0 Behavioral Health Solutions. Additionally, Dr. Henderson is an active associate minister and the director of counseling services at the Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in Beaumont, Texas. For the past 12 years, Dr. Henderson has dedicated his life's work toward enhancing the bodies, minds, and spirits of forgotten populations. And that's one of my favorite parts of your bio.
Thank you.
So again, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and how we can stay in contact with you.
You know, one of the things you mentioned, Mentality 2.0 Behavioral Health Solutions. I created that company. And the reason I created is because I was in the hospitals, I was in the prison systems, I was in the jails, I was in the university systems. And what I realized is that there's something rare about me. I'm a Black male that specializes in mental health, right?
Right.
And since that is the case, what I realize is that I am an individual, not to pump myself up, but it's just the truth that's in high demand. And so I wanted to make sure that my brothers and my sisters that's just down the street or within the community can have access to mental health services. And so I've created that. So that is one of the new things that's going on. Many people don't know this, but I have a couple of books that is being written and going through its final stages that will be coming out as well. Something that I'm specializing in is children. I don't know if you know this, Natasha, but when you look at TV today, when you look at cartoons, when you think about mental health, I have two African-American boys that I'm very concerned about going through this time and period. And when I look at the cartoons that they watch, and when I look at some of the books that my wife and I read to them every night, they are not represented, right? And so I wanted to create a space for them. So I am writing several children's books that will be little editions that you can buy in packs, that will be bedtime stories that will contain stories that relate to African-American children and brown children as well. Children that look like them that they can relate to. So yeah, that's where I am.
Wow, that's awesome. I did not know about the books, and congratulations on that. I want to point something out to you guys out there. In his bio, it says that Dr. Henderson is an active associate minister and the director of counseling services at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in Beaumont, Texas. So, Dr. Henderson, you are a Christian, correct?
This is absolutely 1010% correct. Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to point that out, that he is a Christian. However, you guys, as I was saying earlier in a different post, I am a Christian, right? I'm right there with him. Right there with him. But I want you guys to know that this is not just for Christians. This is for anybody and everybody that has an ear to hear the help that they need, as long as they can receive it from who is giving the help and the wisdom. So, hey, this is for everybody. Come on in, and then you get an opportunity to see another side of Christianity. Amen.
Absolutely. Amen.
All right. So again, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We are greatly anticipating to hear what you have to say. Just to go back, our topic for today, you guys, is how to stay mentally healthy in a crisis. So I know that our nation is in a crisis, but this is for everyone also who has experienced and will experience personal crisis. So, hey, this is an all-around topic for you right now, such a time as this. So what's funny is this Let's Talk discussion panel came about to help people who were going through the pandemic, Dr. Henderson. I would have never thought that we would be in a crisis situation in our nation.
Absolutely.
Right. So I never would have thought that during our first discussion that our nation would be on fire for justice due to the death of George Floyd, who was murdered by a white police officer. But here we are, right? So not only is the USA dealing with the emotional and mental distress of the pandemic, but we are now in crisis due to social injustice. So today, Dr. Henderson, you guys, he's going to come in and shed some light on how we can maintain good mental health. I keep saying that because I don't think a lot of people realize how important it is to be mentally healthy. We always think about our bodies being healthy, but it's important to be mentally healthy, and how to identify when we may need to seek professional counseling due to mental distress or illness. All right. So we're going to get right into the questions. So you really answered the first question for me. It was, why did you choose a career in mental health?
Yeah, let me tell you, many people don't know this about me, is that my major in college was actually physical therapy, right? So I really started off in physical therapy until, I kid you not, this is a true story, I kid you not. I am a believer, I am a Christian, so let me tell you all this story. So I was attending Lamar University, I was sitting in the dorm, and I was studying an anatomy and physiology book, right? So I'm studying this book, and the Spirit of the Lord just filled the room. And I kid you not, this is a true story. And I felt like I went somewhere and I could see myself doing exactly what I'm doing now. So it hit me that I needed to change my major and to go into this field here. So I kid you not, this is a true story. The very next day, I went down to the registrar's office and I changed my major and I went into psychology, counseling, mental health. And that's where I've been ever since. Here's another tidbit that a lot of people don't know about me is that I grew up in a single parent household. Right. So my father, who's from the Caribbean, went back to the islands. And so my mother was here to raise me and my siblings. That was difficult because we lived in the hood. And so because we lived in the hood, my mom had to work in those types of things. So I had to grow up a certain way, right? I had to become mature early. In doing so, Natasha, I experienced a lot of things that a child probably should not have experienced, that a teenager would find very difficult. Think about a teenager. You're already trying to identify yourself. You struggling with how you look, and is your nose too big and all these other type of things, right? But to add on grown folk type of issues onto that became very difficult. And what I noticed, this is why I specialize in children and adolescents. What I noticed, Natasha, is this. I didn't have anybody really to talk to. My mom was there, but who talks to their mom, really, really, really about everything, right? Not your personal stuff, and I had a best friend, but even my best friend didn't understand, and I realized that. And so at 37 years old, I just turned 37 last month, I've never forgotten what that experience was like. And so I've made that available to others to be able to sit in that place. And so that's why I sit in the position that I sit in, dealing with mental health, not just for children and adolescents, but for everybody who struggles with opening up and really dealing with where they are.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I definitely didn't know about any of that. I like the way you just expounded on that, because now we see another side of Dr. Justin Henderson. You are real. You've gone through some of the real situations that some of us have gone through, right? And we can relate to that. So I'm so glad you are doing what you're doing, and you can see things from a different perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Okay, so while we're there, tell me this. What is the difference? Let's see. What is the difference between mental health and mental distress? Or let me just say this. What is mental health and what does it cover? Because while I was doing my research, when we normally think about mental health, we think about mental illness. And I realized mental health covers a larger a lot more areas than just mental illness. So what is mental health and what does it cover?
What many people don't realize is that mental health is a very broad term, right? It would be like, what is physical health? We could talk about eating, we could talk about exercising, we could talk about your hair, we could talk about your nails, we could talk about all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how I like to explain it. Mental health has three different components to it, right? You have general mental health, you have mental problems, and then you have mental disorders. So let me start with mental health. Mental health is just your overall health mentally. It's that what I like to call that homeostatic balance, that internal balance that you have within yourself, right? And so that's to wake up and to be okay, to go on, to pay attention to how you feel, what's going on. Are you taking care of yourself? You brushing teeth, you combing your hair, the outfit you got on, does that make you feel good? Do you have support? Do you have family? Are you balancing your life well? Are you balancing your relationships with your job and all those other types of things, right? So it's just general. Now, the second category that a lot of people ignore and don't pay attention to, and this is where we sometimes fall into issues, is mental problems. Mental problems is a step up from just general mental health, right? Mental problems means that I'm experiencing some challenges or some symptoms that's starting to impact some area of my life, right? A prime example would be this. My dog died, and now I'm sad because my dog died. That's a normal reaction to the dog dying. I'm experiencing sadness, I'm crying, I'm going through grief, right? It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. That's a natural doggone reaction to what's going on. And you know, people don't pay attention to that. And so they're like, well, you know, hurry up and get over that or whatever. No, that's natural. And just because you're experiencing that does not mean something's wrong. It's a natural emotional response to life, right? Now, here's what a lot of people really shy away from, and that becomes the highest level of this. That's mental disorders. And mental disorders just says this. It says that you've gone from having these challenges to where you have these sets of symptoms and behaviors that fall into a category that's diagnosable, right? And so let's go back to the dog example. Let's say my dog died, my auntie died, and I've lost my house.
Right.
That's a lot of grief that's going on,
Right.
which I may sit there for a prolonged period of time, right? To the point that my grief enters into depression, to where I cannot sleep, I cannot eat, I cannot think, I cannot go to work. Sometimes I don't even want to get out of bed to take a bath, right? And so these issues are starting to impact my life directly to the point that my life is spiraling down. To now it has become a diagnosable issue. So people need to understand those three categories, Natasha, because it's important to know where you are and how you're dealing with those if you're falling into any of those categories. But the one that I think everybody needs to really pay attention to is the main one, just everyday mental health.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So since you have gone there, um, let's see. Let's go back here. What are some taboos about mental health and or mental illness before we go further?
Many. First of all, you know, I did a research study recently that talked about certain cultural populations that really have taboos when it comes to mental health. Mm-hmm. And populations that tend to really shy away statistically from this concept of mental health are African Americans, just Blacks, period, Hispanic, Latinx populations, and Asians. Those are really primary categories. But watch this, statistically, they are also the individuals that really have a high statistic rate of having a diagnosable disorder. Wow. And the question becomes, why is that? Because we're taught, when you think about our cultures, when you think about the families we come from, we're taught, the first thing we're taught is keep your business in this house, right? Right. So whatever issues we have or whatever problems we have, you better not go outside this house and tell our business and tell that we have any problems. Fix yourself up, put your makeup on, brush your teeth, go on, and pretend like everything is okay. And what we realize is that when we grow up, we still have that mindset. So that when we have issues, we're afraid to reach out for help. We don't want to call anybody. We don't want to pick up the phone. And then we'll say things like, well, I'm going to just pray about it, right? It's okay for you. I want you to pray about it. But God also gives you wisdom and knowledge for you to also act on it as well, right? If you had cancer, I like to give this example. If you have cancer and the doctor says, well, you have cancer, do you just pray about it? You pray about it, plus you go down the street to MD Anderson, where I am, to the doctor. Why? Because he also created the doctor to be able to deal with those issues. Right. Faith without works is dead. You can have the faith, but add some work to that as well. Right. And so it becomes important that I think it's time out for us to cover up secrets and to cover up the facts that we're hurting and to cover up that we're dealing with things. Think about the riots and stuff that's going out. Those people are hurting. Those right. people are struggling. They're angry. They when you talk about 400 years of oppression, right. don't you dare tell me that I don't have a right to be angry. Now, right. I'm not for looting and things of that sort, but I will say this, I understand. Right. You know, especially when it's like a balloon where you're holding on to these things and you almost feel like you're about to pop. Right. And so we have to be okay, Natasha, to have a space that we go to deal with this, right? And so I think it's time out for us to cut out all these taboos that we learn in our families and from friends and everybody else.
Right. Let me interject there because, like you said, growing up, that was the motto in my family. What goes on in this house stays in the house. I have since then broken that, and I've told my daughter that if she feels like that she needs to talk to somebody about something I've done, her dad has done, or anybody else. So please feel free to go and do that. But me holding all of that in, it took me to some very dark places in my life. And it caused me to make a whole lot of mistakes along the way. And it wasn't until actually I got some professional counseling that I was able to start getting free from the old mess and begin to become a brand new me. Okay? So tell me this, what are some signs we can look for in ourselves and in others? First, start with for us, because sometimes we tend to see stuff in other people that we can't see in ourselves. So what are some signs we can see in ourselves that we can look for in ourselves that would alert us that we may need professional help or to reach out to somebody? And then what are signs we can find in someone else?
That's a loaded question, right? Because here's the thing, Natasha. The truth of the matter is the same signs that you're looking for within yourself mm-hmm. are the signs that you're looking for in other people, right? Mm-hmm. That does not change. The issue is it can be more complex than we can see signs in other people, but not ourselves. Mm-hmm. That depends, especially depending on how close that person is to you, right? Mm-hmm. Let me give you a wonderful example. A parent sometimes has difficulties seeing those signs in their children, right? Because many times I don't want to see that. And, or, you know, that's just them being a child or whatever the case may be, right? And we have the same sentiment for ourselves that many times we don't want to see those issues in ourselves. We don't want to see ourselves, watch this, as being weak. And, you know, within our community, especially, that element of weakness is something that we run from. That is not something we want to deal with, right? And so what you're looking for in yourself and others is this. Any change from the normal, period. If there's any change from the normal. You know, I usually give this example. A lot of people who come into my office, Natasha, is like this. They're like, you know what? I don't know how I got to this point. I guess I just woke up like this. Absolutely not. Like any disease, like any situation in our lives, there was a process for you to get to that point. The issue is you just were not paying attention to how you got to that particular point. And so you're not Beyonce, you didn't just wake up like this. So you're not gonna be able to use that one. So the thing about that is this, is your sleeping changing? Are you finding yourself waking up more or sleeping more? That's a clue. Is your appetite changing? Are you finding yourself eating more or eating less? You know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day who's working from home. They're working remotely because of this COVID-19 pandemic, right? And they were like, well, Justin, you know, I'm getting up, going to the refrigerator every 10 minutes.
Mm,
It's not that I'm hungry. It's just I feel the need to keep going back to this refrigerator. We call that nervous eating. So
mm,
paying attention to that, looking at your weight. Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? Right? Those are things. Your moods. Are there frequent changes in your moods? Are you finding yourself to be more irritable? Are you depressed? Even in that depression, or and I'm going to talk about that really for a second. Many people don't realize that in the Black and Brown communities, depression for many of us does not look like the general standard or definition of depression.
mm,
And many mental health professionals don't recognize that either. When you talk about Black and Brown people, depression does not fall on that normal depression scale for many of us. When you talk about we're sad and we're walking around crying and all that type of stuff, sometimes depression looks like I'm angry or
mm,
I'm irritable all of the
mm.
time, and I have no idea why. And what we'll do, especially in the mental health world, we'll be
Right.
like, oh, we're just gonna diagnose that child with having a behavioral problem. Or you know what, you need to have
Wow.
an anger problem and you need to go deal with your anger. And we start to slap those labels on individuals, and that is not true. That for many of us is an element of depression. Crying. You could be crying, but I may want to cry and I just don't. I don't know how. It won't come out. Those types of things. Your energy level. Do you still have that same level of energy and motivation? Looking at isolation. I don't want to fool with anybody. You get off work, you come home, you lock the door, and you just go in your house and you don't want to fool with anybody. All of those things are clues that many times we don't pay attention to. Why? Because we just tell ourselves, I'm going to deal with this on my own. This is what it's
Mm,
going to be. And remember those three elements I talked about earlier?
mm,
When you go from having a mental problem, something that's just throwing itself out, I'm stressed, or my sleep is off, it's just throwing itself every now and again. If you don't tend to, it manifests and it becomes a true mental disorder to where you do fall into a category of clinical depression to the point that it can become so bad. People don't know this. It can be so bad that you cannot get out of bed. You cannot walk. You cannot talk. You start to experience psychosis where you're seeing stuff or hearing things that's not really there. Who wants to go there? Go get some help.
help. Say it one more time.
Go get some help, please.
Amen. Okay. So let's okay, so you just basically answered one of my questions. So let me say this, going back to the kids, because tomorrow night we'll actually be talking about parenting during a crisis. When it comes to the kids, and we're starting to see changes in them, I really want to hit on that for a second because, like you said, we our kids are dealing with things that we're not addressing. Like you said, probably because one, we don't want to see it, or two, we just pushing it to the side as adolescents. So when we start to see things like that, how should a parent address that with their child? How can you have a conversation like that with your child? And go ahead, you can go ahead.
You're hitting the nail on the head. Watch this. Be honest. How would you want somebody to think about that as a child? Go back. I often tell parents this. Go back to when you were a child, right?
Mhm.
How would you have wanted someone to address that with you? Directly? Children are smarter than we give them credit for.
Mhm.
Children can pick up on our emotions and everything as well. And so, whenever there's an issue going on, or you see something going on with your child, talk about it. Be honest. Just have, watch this, a child appropriate conversation, right? So
Right.
that you can get to the root of the issue. Because you don't want them to go to school and then the school have to have a conversation about it with them, and then the school labels them. You don't want to have a police officer, a detention officer, or someone have to speak to them about what's going on with them and slap a label on them and those
Right.
types of things. I would rather have this heart-to-heart conversation with my child, age appropriately. I keep saying that, age appropriately, because I don't want nobody else to make a deposit in my child, especially if I don't know what type of deposit you're going to make.
Right. Right. That is so good. And so I'm gonna interject this. I'll ask one more question and we'll wrap it up. There was a I have an experience with one of my kids where I noticed some very different changes going on within her. This is when I was younger, but I saw these changes and it scared me. Like I didn't know how to take it. And you hit the nail on the head when you said you don't want to see it. And you just want to push it to the side. And I did not know how to address that. However, I feel like if I would have addressed it properly at the time, it would have prevented her from going through some of the things that she actually went through. So I wanted to throw that out there so that people will know that, hey, if you're seeing this going on in your home, you are not alone. There's others that are dealing with this, and we just don't know how to deal with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just
Right.
need a little bit of help to think about what you just said. If you have a teenager who's
Yes.
dealing with teenage things already, right?
Yes.
Why add on all this other type of stuff?
Right.
You know what, Natasha, I think about being a teenager dealing with all of these different moving parts of life
Right.
and trying to discover who I was and trying to discover my place in society and in the
Right.
world. And I wish someone would have came and had a conversation with me
Right.
rather than me going to hunt for the answer outside of my house when the people in my house really could have done a really good job of handing me everything that I need.
Right, right. I agree. Okay, one more question. So, at what point so this is a question from Facebook. At what point do you need to seek professional help from a psychiatrist versus just a counselor? That's a good question.
That is an excellent question, whoever sent that in. I have this conversation with people all day long. And this is what I say. I am not an advocate for medication, right? And
Hmm.
first of all, let me tell you the difference. Many people get psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist,
Right,
all those people mixed up in one. A
right,
psychiatrist is a medical doctor who prescribes psychotropic medications to deal with a mental disorder, right? So
mhm,
you go into the doctor's office, you see them just like you see your primary doctor for about 15, 20 minutes, and then they're going to check on your medication, see how you're doing, so forth and so on.
right,
They are not going to sit there and talk to you about your problems for 2 hours. So don't think that, right?
right,
A psychologist can do therapy. They do not prescribe medication. They can do therapy, but most psychologists specialize in testing. So they're the ones who do the testing that you see for the schools or the personality testing and things of that
mhm,
sort. They specialize in those things. And then therapists actually go into the work. They hand you life tools to be able to cope with life. So here's what I say. I say what you need to do is it depends on where you are.
mhm,
If you're dealing with a mental issue that you are spiraling out of control and you're having difficulties focusing and thinking and getting to work and all of those types of things, it gets to the point that you may need medication because I would rather you, first of all, it is my professional opinion that psychotropic medication is a temporary type thing, right? It's a
right,
temporary fix for a lot of us. Not to say that many individuals who have mental disorders will not be on that for long term. Absolutely. Some people need that long term, especially if you're talking about a chemical imbalance
right,
or some type of internal thing with their body that needs to be corrected.
right,
But for a lot of us, Natasha, that's not the case. It's just that we need to learn everyday tools. We need to
mhm,
have tools in our toolbox to be able to deal with life. Life is going to happen to everyone. The
mhm,
issue is we just don't have those basic tools. A lot of us simply don't have those basic tools to be able to cope with life. And so that's where therapists fall into place. So, knowing those things, this is my take on it. If a person comes to me and they are really struggling, they're
mhm,
having difficulties even listening to me, even focusing in the therapy session and things of that sort, it becomes important for you to go get that steady, right? Because how are you going to really participate in therapy with your mind off balance?
right,
And so sometimes what I have to tell people is, let's do this temporary thing, get you on some psychotropic medication. You don't have to be on it long so that your mind can be at a place to where you can learn these strategies so that you can fully open up in therapy and talk about what it is that you need to talk about. And when we feel like you've come back to a stable place, then you can walk away from those psychotropic medications if it's deemed necessary. Many people don't need psychotropic medications. They really don't. They just need the tools. So it depends. It's a juggling act, and it depends on how far into that. Are you in that category of just having, I'm just doing a checkup on my mental health, right?
mhm, mhm,
Which you don't have to go to a therapist because you have a problem. You're just going to everybody that goes to therapy does not have a problem. I believe everybody needs a therapist. You're going into therapy just so that you can have an individual that is non-judgmental, so you could just say whatever it is and get it off your chest,
Right.
right?
Right. Okay.
And then,
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. So I want you to end with this. Because this is for people who are dealing with the stress of this pandemic, losing their jobs, COVID-19, family members being hospitalized, they can't be there with them, they're dying, the protests, the injustices. What are some things we can do, like you were saying earlier, to stay healthy mentally to prevent us from spiraling out of control?
absolutely. That's a wonderful question. Several things that I'm suggesting people do. First of all, have you a social media diet and a news diet. Be careful with how much information you're taking in.
That's
I see
good.
some of y'all on Facebook and everywhere, y'all all over the place, commenting and responding to people and arguing with people and all of that. That takes too much energy out of you.
Right.
And it's exhausting. I don't know about you, but as a Black male, dealing with everything that's going on, I am exhausted. And so I don't need you to take a little bit of energy that I have left for me, right? So put some parameters about what you're feeding yourself. That becomes important. Increase your pleasurable activities. People don't realize, remember I was talking about that internal balance earlier? Many times, Natasha, we start to focus on things that we don't control and we throw ourselves on balance. No, start focusing on the stuff you can control, and that is taking care of yourself. So go for a walk. Do a DIY spa day. Go sit in your backyard and eat lunch with your kids or something like that. Try to make things as normal as possible. Have family fun night and all of those types of things. Here goes another one. Exercise. Get up. Stop going to the refrigerator. Get up and exercise. That releases chemicals, pleasurable chemicals that is wonderful for the brain that helps you out. I also love meditation. I combine, since I'm a believer, I combine my prayer life with my meditation. I like to center myself at the end of the day to release all of this toxic stuff that's going on in our society. So that becomes important. If you don't know how to do that, YouTube has 100 videos, thousands of videos to be able to teach you that, right?
Right.
So try that out. And just talking to someone, pick up the phone, have someone, whether it's a friend, whether it's a church member, whether it's a colleague, whatever the case may. If it's me, pick up the phone and call me. You could call me. We can set up. Most counselors are virtual right now, where they'll pop up on your computer screen. You can have a conversation about whatever it is. Don't hold those things in. Be able to release that stress and frustration in a healthy way. So that's my advice.
Thank you. That was good. And with that, we're going to end. One more time, if you can tell us how we can contact you and how we can stay connected to you, and we'll end like that.
Several ways you can contact me. I'm on Psychology Today. Just type in my name, Justin Henderson. You can also contact me through my website at www.mentality2.com. There, or just call me at 832-408-1368.
All right. There you go, you guys. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. Thank you, Dr. Justin Henderson, for your time, for your wisdom, for your knowledge. You are appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. So tomorrow, you guys, 7 p.m., join me. Miss Gail Showalter will be with us talking about parenting during a crisis. Until then, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Good night.